Hello. So today's vlog, I'm really upset. I had a big fight with my brother yesterday, and he got really upset at me and blew up on me over the phone. And these are just my thoughts about that and what happened since. And I'm gonna talk about family issues and then about conflict as well. So what happened was yesterday, I called my brother and I asked if he wanted to get a cup of tea. And he said, we started bickering right away. So he said, it's rush hour. And I said, yes. Why would you? Because he says, well, it's rush hour, right? And I was like, yeah, I didn't say we have to go immediately. It could be this evening, right? And then that upset him that I mentioned that. And then he said, well, could I meet you somewhere and then we just have tea there and then go home? I said, well, that's weird, like you're just trying to leave right away. And I said, it's because you're in fight or flight all the time. And I've told him this before, and it's too on the nose. When I say some stuff, when I say it, it's too on the nose for people, even if it's just like a realistic statement. A lot of people really don't want to hear it. And so he got really mad, and he was saying, like, you're always trying to do this. He not really saying what exactly I'm trying to do. And then he said, I can't even exactly remember what happened, but he started to blow up on me. And I said that, you're not acting like an older brother. And that really got on his nerves. And he was getting really mad. And he was calling me a bunch of names. He was yelling on the phone. And he was really calling my mental state into question. And he was saying a lot of really cruel things, like you need to snap out of it, and you're going into the cold water and everybody's watching you do it. And he's saying, like, you're airing dirty laundry when you tell aunties and uncles what's going on, and they're all looking at you. So he's trying to, like, call my mental state into question, invalidating what I'm doing. Basically, I'm trying to help him. I kept saying, like, I'm trying to help you, and that's the reason why I'm calling him to go for a cup of tea. And also because he said, when he was having a previous anxiety attack and he was, like, going to the hospital, he was saying he's going to the hospital because he thought he would have a heart attack. He was saying, I was helping him, like, talking to him on the phone, keeping him company, and he was saying, you're my brother, I wish we did stuff together, I wish we hung out more, I wish we spent time together. And so I hear that, and I'm like, waiting, okay, that sounds good. I tell him, like, yes, that's good, I'm waiting, and never really happens. And then I tell him, like, well, the only time we ever hang out is if I make it happen. You say this, but you don't do anything. And so that's why I said, like, you're not acting like an older brother. And so he was really mad, and then he's yelling at me for like 20 minutes. Well, more like 15 minutes maybe. And 15-20 minutes. And I was not yelling back. I was just staying calm, and for the most part, like, trying to stay calm and just saying, like, I called you for a cup of tea, you're blowing up on me, like. But he was really just, like, unleashing. It was like wrath. And then he was saying all these things about my mental state and everything. And then what happened was he said, or he started to calm down basically, because you can only really sustain that level. Someone's nervous system can only sustain that for so long. And so he started to calm down, and he sort of started to switch into more of like guilt over what he'd just done. And he was saying, well, do you want to still go for a cup of tea? Come on, I'll come pick you up. Let's go right now. I said, no, I don't want to. And he was really insisting, and I was saying, we can go another time. I don't think it's a good time to go now after you just blew up on me like that. And he was saying, like, I don't trust that. Come on, let's go. Stuff like this. So he kept insisting, and then eventually I said, well, I don't really want to go drive around, and you can come here and we could play a game of cards, like cribbage. It's like a card game, and I can make a cup of tea. And he said, okay, yeah, I'll come there. And so then he came down here, and like, I mean, I knew it was not a good idea, just because like I hadn't really a chance to process anything. Like, that was too much. And then but he came down here, and it was like he didn't really care about the card game. He played like we played up to like 30, which is like a fourth of a game. It goes up to 121 in points. And then he just like basically was kind of rambling, and then he was saying that he apologized, and I forgave him, but I felt more like pushed to do it, and it felt like it was just he was guilty, and he wanted to try and like, you know, make sure everything's okay, everything's all right. It's like, I don't really like that. It's kind of like the pattern in our family. It's like instability. It's like there's huge issues, huge tension, people are under stress, and then there's a huge blow up, and then it's like, then the family kind of comes together really quickly and really like suddenly to try and correct, and then says a bunch of like sappy stuff to try and like be like, oh, but look, we still love each other, right? And this is how a family is, and blah 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 blah. And it's like, that's toxic in my opinion. Like, it felt kind of toxic. It reminded me of that, but I was not really able to like think very clearly at the time. And I just kind of like thought like, well, you know, forgiveness, like, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And so I told him like, I forgive you, but I still felt really bad about just that he unloaded, like he just like completely unloaded, like. And this is what I talk about sometimes when I say that people are on a hair trigger. Some people, they're on like a survival state. They're not really, you could say, wrapped too tightly. They're not in like a healthy state. And then it's like, you don't want to set them off. And by setting them off, it's really just anything that challenges the narrative that they have, that will set somebody off. And I'm not specifically blaming him too much, but I do not appreciate, and I don't think it was right that he blew up on me like that, like extreme amount. But the thing is, I challenged the narrative where I told him, you know, you're not acting like an older brother. I told him. And so that's like when you go below the tip of the iceberg. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's below the iceberg, below surface level. And I'm saying this stuff, and I was telling him when he was blowing up and he's trying to invalidate every single thing I said and saying I'm causing all these problems. I said, like, I'm saying what's true. You know, this stuff happened. And he's trying to say, like, that it's really just my perception and so on. And that I need to like snap out of it and something like this. It's like, yeah, that's pretty hurtful. Like, I knew it was untrue, because it's like all you have to do is, you really have to look at what happened, and then you have to study kind of, if you study, for me at least, if you study things about the nervous system, like, okay, well, trauma is stored in the nervous system. And then if you study about, like, well, he even brought this up, it was weird. He said, like, you think you're like one of those babies on the YouTube video that is like traumatized or something and looking around for his mother. I was like, I think I know which video you're talking about. I don't know exactly, but maybe I had sent that to him a long time ago. I'm not sure exactly, but that's factual as well. Like, it's just a study about infants and attachment, and it's like a study about trauma. And so it's like these topics can make people blow up. It's because it's painful. Obviously it's really painful, but it's wrapped up, it's bound up, it's tied to everything in the worldview. So that's why I say it's a narrative thing. So anyways, there's this huge fight. Then he came down here, and he's trying to, like, force an apology and force forgiveness. And I did forgive him, but I gotta speak truthfully. Like, it did not feel right. Like, it did not feel right. But that's, so I was thinking about it. I was like, well, maybe forgiveness is a process. And also I've been praying about love, like asking Jesus, how do I love? Like, I don't really understand that. Like, I feel when I pray a connection to God, but I don't fully understand the love aspect. And that's really important, because you actually have to love God, and you have to love your neighbor. Those are the greatest commandment and the second greatest commandment. So I was asking about love, and I was trying to figure that out, and then we had this huge fight, and then he come down here, and he did make some okay points, like good points. Like, I have to give it to him on a couple things. He did say that he was there for me in some times. Like, when I had a huge trip on shrooms that was way too much, I had no one to call, and I tried calling my friend. I felt like I had no one to call. I tried calling my friend. He wasn't able to help, wasn't able to come. I tried calling my therapist at the time. They were not really able to help. They basically told me to call the emergency. I thought about calling the emergency services, like 911, and then I called my brother. And he actually did come through, and he came and he showed up, and he was trying to help, and he stayed there. And that was a big help, actually. So that is true. And he has actually been there for me at times. The reason I say it's not acting like an older brother is because if I have to twist somebody's arm to get them to do something, if you have to force somebody to behave like they're your family, then it doesn't really feel like, it feels not good. It doesn't feel natural. It doesn't feel normal. It doesn't feel loving. And so I really don't like that. Personally, I really dislike that, where the family dynamic is everybody is walking on eggshells and waiting for the next shoe to drop, for the next eruption, for the next catastrophe, for the next blow up, for the next freak out, for the next whatever. So it's basically just like this PTSD style of normalcy, let's say. And what comes along with that is the nervous system is basically hijacked. The nervous system is in a heightened mode. It's like the engine is revved to the red all the time, and it comes with a whole host of coping behaviors and everything, and just trying to survive. It's survival mode, basically. And like, I measured this in him because I gave him my Aura ring. It's like this ring you can wear that measures some of your vital signs, one of which being it can measure your stress level. And it'll show you a graph. Well, His graph is like through the roof. I tried measuring my mom's. Hers is like very high, like 70% of the time. And his is like very high, like a lot of the time. Like one day it said he was in the stressed zone for 16 hours and it showed the graph. It was like at the very highest part. And so it's like, you know, this guy is extremely stressed. I'm trying to help him. He's my brother. I don't like the mixed messaging, and I don't go along with the narrative, basically, where everything is okay and positive attitude crap and productive conversation crap, and this is not productive, and like gaslighting, oh, it's just your mental state, and huge blow up if I say anything that's against the narrative. I don't like that. So anyways, yeah, I felt it was very hurtful, and it just didn't feel right when he forced the apology. And then he told me that, he says, and I forgive you too. And I'm like, for what? Like, I didn't apologize. I don't like when people do that. I feel like maybe I've done that before, not to family though. Maybe I've done that to family. I'm not even sure. But the reason, I don't think I've done that. The thing is that I don't like that, because if you are to forgive somebody, they need to actually have apologized, and then I do believe that there needs to be an understanding, or they need to say it explicitly what they're apologizing for. You know, because just like a blanket sorry or I forgive you or something like that, and it's like, for what? You know what I'm saying? Like, I was saying everything I was saying to him was true, and I wasn't trying to be mean like he was. And when I told him earlier, I was like, I'm trying to help you, and he says, you know what? We can agree to help each other. I'm like, I didn't ask for your help. You know what I mean? Like, it kind of like gets on my nerves, because I wish that the roles were correct. Like, and he was saying like, well, I was 13 and 14 when all this stuff happened, and how are you blaming me for this? I'm 37 and I was just a kid. And I was like, yeah, I was 6 and 7. And I was saying like, you know, you did not act like an older brother to me at that time. And I wasn't even really blaming him. I was just saying like, you have not acted like an older brother. And I said too, it's a family issue. And so honestly, it's just narcissism is, that's like what happens under extreme narcissism. And I'm not saying that I'm some saint, okay, who doesn't think about myself. I'm saying that everybody thinks about themselves, but that's not what love is, okay? And I'm saying that, like, when you say something that's true, but it challenges somebody's, you know, warped or diluted, or just whatever their story is, if it challenges it at a core level or at like a deep level, even if it's true, you will get like a fight or flight response. So that's kind of what happened. It was like rage, extreme rage, and it was kind of like went through the stages, like from my brother. It was like flight into fight into, I guess, like kind of like guilt or something, and then flight again. And like, it's just really difficult to live with family like this. And that's kind of like when I say it's a family issue, and I don't really blame him fully. I'm saying that it's like, this is like parental. It's hard when even the concept of blame is a hard one to talk about or to say, because when you think about blame, it's like, it's kind of like who did something wrong, and then nobody wants to accept it that they maybe did something wrong. and it gets very diffuse. Well, I did this because of that, but they won't actually tell you any of their reasoning, and it's like nobody talks about anything either. So you never really get a proper chance for anyone to express anything, and it's just very unhealthy. And personally, I feel like our parents are the ones that should have provided a stable environment. And I tell this to my mom, and she's actually really, I would say, at least acknowledged kind of what's going on. And she's tried to apologize as well. So, I mean, I appreciate that. It doesn't make up for, let's say, all of the damage, because a lot of this stuff is developmental damage too. And this is, like I say, about like psychology. There's windows, okay? When your brain is developing, that goes through different windows. You can look up, I think Piaget talks about this, but there's other ones. Kohlberg, stages of development. Jean Piaget talked about this, but a person, a human, goes through stages of development where the brain is forming. Parts of the brain, like your executive function, your prefrontal cortex, is not even fully developed till you're 25. I think a lot of people kind of know this fact, but you have all these other stages like sensory motor and all this other stuff. I'm not actually fully 100% sure about all the stages, but I do know that they develop at certain windows or time periods when you're young and throughout your life. So a lot of people like to talk about rewiring and all this stuff. Well, okay, I mean, true, there's neuroplasticity, meaning that your brain can change as you get older still, right? There's ability for that. But you learn a lot of stuff when you're like under 7. You learn a lot of stuff when you get a little bit older, but then you start being able to learn less. It's like children are a sponge, and you can pick up your mother tongue or your fluent language when you're young. Well, it's similar to that with attachment style, how you relate to other people, how you feel around other people. That's also similar. So that you learn that, and you learn that in your family environment, right? So that's why I kind of I'm like, it was our parents, really. And then, okay, I get it that there's stuff that happened in their lives, but I do feel that the parents should be responsible for the upbringing of the children. So, I feel like they did not do a good job bringing us up. And although I think that they did try at times, but I feel like it was complete chaos. And we developed like a lot of stress and all that. Now, I agree that there's a lot of outside forces as well that are going on too, but I do think that acknowledgement needs to be at least made, you know what I'm saying? And people need to be able to say kind of like, well, what happened to you specifically? But it's kind of like no one can even say anything because some sort of a huge walking on eggshells type of deal going on, you know what I'm saying? So anyways, I felt it was very hurtful. I just kind of went to bed last night, just wanted to go to sleep, and then I woke up at like 5:30 in the morning, and I was like crying a little bit, like tears, and because it really affected me. I was not able to really process it very quickly. I'm not really able to process things very quickly sometimes. But I felt it at the morning a little bit, and then I went back to bed, and I just stayed in bed. I just wanted to sleep, and I was able to sleep, and then I had a therapy appointment today, which was I'm thankful for, and talked to my therapist, and it was kind of helpful just to talk about it with my therapist. But I guess that I near the end I cried a little bit, but like I've been saying, my therapist will start talking if I'm crying, and it's like the whole point is I'm just trying to express emotion. Like that's the point, is I'm trying to cry, and they were saying like, well, I was saying like, yeah, it's really hard to cry. Like, I don't want to tell them like you're not doing your job very well. Like, you need to be letting me cry. Like, please do your job better. I don't like to be on the nose with people really, because I don't want to get into a conflict. You know what I mean? But they were saying like you have an emotional blockage, and so. And honestly, I realize it's not a good thing to be indirect. That's why I'm trying to learn how to be direct. But it necessitates conflict, and it's hard for me with conflict. So I'm learning. But they were saying like you have an emotional blockage, and I was saying yeah, I know, and I'm trying to let out like cry, and they were saying like I don't really want you to think that I'm coming here. I'm like trying to make you cry, and I was like yes, please, like. I know it sounds crazy, but I'm serious. Like the a lot like being able to cry is like a gift. Like I guess maybe there's some people that you could say cry too much. I don't think that's really the case. It's more women, I suppose, but especially for men, it's like you get called a faggot. I told my therapist, I was like, when I was younger or whatever, like you get called a faggot, you get called a pussy, you get called weak or a bitch. It's like, so what do you learn? It's like you learn you should not cry. And I'm not, it's like hard to even figure out, because you don't want to be like someone who starts crying all the time, but if you have like emotions or whatever, if you suppress them all the time, it leads to neurosis. Like it leads to other effects. This is in psychology. They talk about this stuff about sublimation, which basically just means like if you suppress an emotion or if you're not able to express it, it will come out in other ways. And so like there's these defenses or something. One of them is like intellectualization. Some people just like try and think. They're just like overthinking constantly because they're not able to express an emotion, right? So I actually see this with a lot of writing, a lot of books by even really, you could say, educated or learned people. Well, they're trying to express something that they're not able to from a long time ago, perhaps. So anyways, it comes out in other ways. There's other ones too. I'm not even sure. I can't remember all of them, but there's these sort of like emotional defenses where these emotions get displaced, and you get some sayings. They say like behind all anger is fear. That's kind of true, right? And I do believe that people have emotions and that it's normal to have them, and I think that people have, you could say, emotions in varying degrees. Like maybe some people would be more emotional, some less. The thing I think is that actually like all good things come from God. So like good emotions come from God, happiness, joy, peace, love. Whereas, but I don't really think that it's not like bad emotions come from the devil, I don't think. I just think that they're not really bad emotions, let's say. It's just that you need to be able to express them and weep, and your reasoning needs to be like correct, like behind them. It's like Yeah, that's a complicated point, but I guess it would go into like attachment style, and then also worship of God. Like, are you weeping because you were attached to having a certain job or a car, or people thinking a certain way about you having a car or a job, or something like, I don't know, it shouldn't be for like a sinful reason, I think, like pride, greed, lust, all of those things. I guess, yeah, and then if you feel like ashamed or ashamed into a low, if you feel shamed or ashamed, I'm not even sure, like, anyways, kind of going off track there, but, so anyways, I talked to my therapist, and then, I hope that she was saying that next time she might be able to help me. She's gonna look up how to help somebody with an emotional blockage release it, and I'm like, yes, please. The thing is, I'm just so burnt out on trying different therapists, and she's doing a decent job, but I would say she's pretty good in some ways, and I think the main goal I'm trying to have is healing and expressing emotion. So I think maybe she could use some work. She could improve there. So at least now she understands. So maybe she'll be able to help next week. And anyways, my mom is coming back today, and I would say that it's kind of exhausting dealing with family, because my mom is homeless. She's homeless, and sort of like a transient homeless, because she was living in her car, she was living in a garage, she was house sitting for my auntie or my auntie's friends, and she was now house sitting for the past week for my auntie's friend, but she's going to be coming back here. She's been staying with me for months, and she'll be here for like 3 more weeks, and then she'll go house sit for a period of like 5 months. But it's like, it's more, again, it's about the stability thing, and it's also about like the roles thing, like who the fuck is supposed to figure like somebody else's life out for them. And like, it's very frustrating, because why am I supposed to do that? I understand helping, right? When people ask for help, you help them, but there's got to be some sort of like a role or a boundary or something, like, or an understanding. So it can be exhausting, but I'm not being mean to her or anything. I'm letting her stay here, but I'm trying to tell her, like, you need to figure something out. Like, I can help you. There's places that can help you. You need to call these places. Like, you need to do something. But she just kind of doesn't want to think about it, right? So it's more of this kind of pattern of delusion, I guess you could say. You might even call it differing realities. But, I mean, if you talk about what's true in the facts, then people get really angry, or they go into like defenses. And the truth in the facts is like, well, she's homeless. Like, the children are not supposed to provide stability and all this safety and everything. Nobody really wants to talk about the issue in my family. They'll ask obliquely, oh, how's your mom doing? It's like, do you not realize she's fucking homeless? She's like, it's like, do you not realize that's a huge burden? Like, people don't want to talk about anything real, I suppose, because it's like everybody's like in like separate realities or something. So anyways, and the thing is, like, I just want to make it clear, I actually like hanging out. I actually like relaxing. I like having like chill conversation. I like running errands. I like talking about the weather or whatever, but it's about it's kind of about the context too, if you, if you're just doing that, it's like that old meme of like the house is on fire and the dog's sitting there saying this is fine. People start to go insane with that stuff, and they go psychotic about it, because they turn their life into a meme. But it's like, that's kind of the truth. Like, the context is important. Like, like, what else is going on if you're going to be pretending like everything is okay? Hey, do you want to go shopping? Hey, do you want to go for a tea and all this? Like, there's kind of a responsibility aspect and a priorities aspect that goes along with stuff. You know what I mean? That's when I talk about why I talk about narrative. Like, what's really going on in the world? What's going on? How does it affect you? What do you think? Stuff like this. I used to like to do that because everybody loves to talk and people love when you ask them questions. But then I realized that, oh, well, everyone's just kind of talking from their own position, and oftentimes it's basically a bullshit position. And you can't really say anything true because then they get triggered. And so if you ask them like light softball questions, a lot of times people just start to go into like justification for talking around something that's like kind of bullshit. And I'm sick of that. I don't like that. I don't really find that enjoyable, to base an entire relationship on that, because I find that it becomes kind of toxic, really, where you can't say anything that's true. You can't say anything that's on the nose. Not in an attacking way, but in a, like, okay, this is going on, right? You are homeless. Okay, we are in a therapy session. Crying is supposed to be the point, right? Emotional release. You are getting paid for this. This is your job. You studied this. Okay, you say that you want to hang out more. We never hang out. Whenever we hang out, it's because I make it happen. So that's when I talk about narrative. I'm saying, you can kind of like play bullshit with like one person if you can get it past them. If that person's kind of like a patsy, very agreeable person, or someone who's overly empathetic and whatever, but I do feel like the truth is really important. Like, it's like the most important thing. So there needs to be able to we need to be able to have conversations about the truth. I know I'm rambling here. But anyways, yeah, so there's a lot of stress on me from family problems. It's hard because my family doesn't really want to deal with it. I feel like there's a lot of stress in the world. And I've talked about this with all that's going on. And if you go online, I mean, it's kind of what people are drawn to is conflict and looking at conflict. And we live in, I've heard this and I agree with it, that we live in kind of a spectator society. And so a lot of people really like to be spectators, to watch conflict, but there's only very few people that are in the arena for the most part. So I think a lot of this stress in the world necessitates conflict. Now, there's ways of dealing with it, let's say. And, I'm trying to learn how to deal with conflict, but I used to kind of have this attitude like, oh, whatever, forget it, doesn't matter. That's stupid. Who cares? But that doesn't actually really deal with all the conflict. It's not exactly healthy. So, yeah, and I think that there's different positions. Some people become Buddhist and they talk about non-attachment is the answer to life, and so I used to actually kind of have more of a Buddhist attitude, and it's kind of like this just let go attitude. Just let it go. And this is what you do in a meditation, is that Buddhists talk about the monkey mind, and then there's all these thoughts coming to you, and you are supposed to sit there and let the thoughts come and then let them go as if they were clouds drifting past a tree, and you're sitting by the tree or something. And then what happens is eventually you break through, you could say, to like a higher state of consciousness, and it's a feeling essentially, but it will be kind of like they're going for like the state of no mind or something like this. And the thing is that these meditation and mindfulness things actually do work. People like to repackage it. You could say repackage, where they take meditation and they just call it mindfulness, and then they're just talking about just observe and just let it go and be the observer and all this stuff. So it's like the book Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, or Tolle, I don't know. And it talked there's a lot about meditation, but and Buddhism for dealing with problems, but or for dealing with conflict or dealing with stuff in the world, but then there's the Christian perspective, which I take, is the perspective of there is suffering in the world. Buddhists talk about suffering as well, but Christians, we talk about it as well, but it's, you have to pick up your cross and follow Jesus. Bear your cross, that's your suffering. And the goal is reunity with God, reunification with God, and that's through pureness of heart, or purity of heart, and that's like a reconnection with God, and it is actually broken. That connection is broken through sin. Okay, so sin is separation from God. Anything that separates you from God, that's a sin. So it separates you from the will of the Father is a sin. And that's what it talks about. You shouldn't sin. Well, a lot of people don't even agree. If you're not a Christian, you wouldn't even agree on the concept of sin. A lot of people, they take issue with the idea of original sin, I think. And then there's different perspectives on this within different churches. Because some people don't like this idea that everybody's a sinner. It's like, well, what did I do, Things happened to me. The world is happening to me. I'm really not doing anything. I'm just reacting to it in a way. So it's like, when did I make that first action? Oh, it was made by Adam and Eve. Well, what's that got to do with me? And so people don't like that. Now, I've heard different perspectives in the church, and one that I've heard is that we don't have original sin, we have a proclivity towards sin. So I'm not actually 100% sure, just to be honest, about which one I actually believe. I'm kind of thinking about it, but I'm thinking like we have a proclivity to sin. That does make sense to me. Because there is the story of Mary, and I believe she was sinless, and I think that's why God chose her to carry Jesus. So because she was sinless, she was able to be the vessel for love, which is Jesus, and of course love is God. We believe that as Christians, that God is love. Jesus is love, and God sacrificed himself, became incarnate, meaning he came down to earth and became flesh in Jesus, sacrificed himself on the cross, went willingly, and this sacrifice is an act of love. So love, as Christians, we believe it's self-sacrifice. Picking up your cross and carrying it bearing it. So that's love, and it comes from God the Father, and it's like a repayment. It's a ransom for our sins, I believe. Not sure on the wording there, but it's a payment for our sins from God Himself, and anyone is able to have this payment or have this reunification with God, cleansing of debt, cleansing of sin, through God's mercy, and God's love. Okay, so that is sort of how we see that, and the Bible writes quite extensively about how to live. I haven't read the entire Bible yet. I've read parts of the New Testament, and I'm working through the Old Testament. I'm on the book of Samuel. But I do know that Jesus, He tells us that, when someone strikes you on the face, turn the other cheek. And when someone sins against you, you are supposed to tell them of the wrongdoing that they've done, and if they forgive you there, then you should forgive them. If they don't forgive you, go tell two or three others, I think, in the presence of that person. And if they don't forgive you still, then go tell the church community, and and in front of that person, and get the church community's consensus or thoughts about it. And if that person still doesn't forgive you, then let it be done. Don't keep seeking forgiveness. So I think that's a really powerful teaching, because it's just it's got to do with the power of society, really, of other people and the opinion of other people. Because can you imagine one of your deepest grudges, whatever, if it's something that happened to you, it's actually really hard to go and say to somebody, this is what happened, you need to apologize, you've sinned against me, and then just doing that itself would be really hard to do, for a deeply held grudge. And then, okay, now going and sharing that with multiple people, and going and sharing that with a whole group of people, that's really powerful, because it's so hard to do. Okay, it's really, really, those things can be really hard to do. Because it's got to do with judgment, right? It's got to do with opinion, public opinion. It's got to do with the stories as well of what really happened, and so that's really really important from the Bible. But that's contrasted with the Old Testament, where it tells us an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Well, that makes kind of sense if you look at what's going on with the Israel-Palestine conflict as well. And sort of I would say the way some people, Jewish people especially, they seek vengeance, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. That's what it tells us in the Old Testament. Not saying maybe there's exceptions, right? But that is in the Old Testament. And that's changed in the New Testament. It's actually turn the other cheek. Which is really powerful if you think about it, because if everybody's doing eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, meaning a one-for-one balancing of transgressions or of sins against you or whatever, if everyone's doing that, Yeah, I mean the strongest would prevail, I suppose, but it would just be constant conflict, constant war. So, yeah. But anyways, I believe that the stress in the world, it necessitates conflict. And so I do think that healthy conflict is important. And I got to make this point that my brother calling me all these names and calling my mental state into question, I would say this is really common, almost like tactic that happens a lot to a lot of people. Maybe not to everybody, but I think that the heart of that issue is narrative, and it's because if somebody is saying something and they're just crazy, well then don't listen to that. So it's a way of invalidating everything. And I'm saying like, well, a lot of stuff happened when we were younger, and he's saying, well, you need to snap out of it, essentially, meaning that doesn't matter. It's all invalid. You know what I'm saying? And I'm telling him like this stuff, it's stored in the body, like uh, these are issues that don't just go away by not looking at them. But I think this happens to a lot of people, and you can look at Trump as one example. Very divisive, dividing, causes people to take sides, and a lot of anger and everything loaded in there. But the thing about that is that one side calls the other side crazy, and the other side calls the other side crazy. But if you look at Trump, when he started running or announced that he was going to run for presidency of the USA, I don't know when that was. Was that in like 2015 or 14, something like this? A lot of people were calling him crazy. They were mocking him relentlessly. He was like the butt of the joke for a lot of people, Democrats especially. Obama was roasting him at like a dinner that Trump was present at, and like, so what happened? Well, he got in. So then what happened then? Everybody, all of Canada, like, or most Canada, tons of people, all the Democrats, like a bunch of the Europeans, Germans, everybody's just like sneering. They're like they're like so smug. There's like this huge amount of smugness, calling people crazy. Americans are crazy for voting for Trump. America's crazy. Trump's crazy. Trump's all these different names. And basically, so this is a really common thing that people will do, and it's to invalidate your entire position. If you are crazy, goodbye. Like, we feel bad for you. Like, you should get help. Like, go get help. Go to therapy. You need to get on your meds. You need to take some pills. You need to you need to go in an asylum, an institution. You're stark raving mad. Like, we don't have to listen to anything you're saying. And so this is very common. It's like a way of just invalidating everything. And yeah, you have to actually be kind of careful with the whole crazy thing and throwing that around, and like insane and crazy and everything, because yeah, that can be, be careful about that. That's there needs to be truth and facts that go along with stuff. Otherwise, it can be really like, you're crazy. Well, no, you're crazy. You're crazy. No, you're. It's like, okay, like, what's the truth in all of that? Like, who's not crazy? Like, who's what's really going on? What's the norm? What's normal and what's not crazy? And so we have, it's a big issue, really. And I think it's a way of a lot of people are controlled, to be honest with you, is that a lot of people do not want to be called crazy. They do not want to be called conspiratorial. They do not want to be called whatever. And like, it gets really, vicious. You can see with like Trump derangement syndrome, they call it. I don't know if that's as much of a thing as it was, but a few years ago, or maybe for the last 10 years or something, up until recently maybe, but still then, they started talking about this thing called Trump derangement syndrome. You just mentioned the name. Huge rant from, whatever boomer, Democrat, liberal, leftist boomer you're talking to. Just huge anger, like huge whatever, and almost to the degree of derangement. So people don't like that, actually. People don't like being called crazy and all of their points are invalidated. And this is part of the whole division and the bubbles, the factional bubbles and different realities, what I'm talking about. So anyways, I'm saying, like, I'm trying to help my brother and also be realistic. But this can be triggering for people. My brother, it can be triggering for other people. Just, facts by themselves, right? It can be very triggering. And it can get really confusing too, because once you start getting experts losing their credibility over stuff like the COVID fiasco or COVID pandemic, scamdemic, whatever it was, once you start losing credibility, well then that's a big issue, right? So yeah, I would say that that's a long-standing issue in society. Maybe I'm just entering the room, but or now seeing the elephant in the room, I guess you could say, maybe. But I've known this for a long time, but I kind of, just thought that I could avoid it. But it's the main issue is the free versus safe issue. And I mean, there's quotes. This is an old issue. It's like any man who any man who would give up his liberty for security deserves neither. That's an old quote from, I think, one of the founding fathers of the U.S. And one man's liberty ends where another man's begins. That's, I don't know who said that, but it's basically talking about freedom, what you can do, and then, what is safe to do, not only just for yourself, but for other people. And so it's the heart of the issue is individualism and collectivism, So, and yeah, it's a really complex one. But like a brief example I would give is just at the library I go to. Well, somebody got stabbed at the downtown library. I don't know if it was 2 years ago or something, but ever since then, there's like security guards everywhere in the library, and there's a metal detector scanner to get in. And so it's just kind of like this, it feels like a prison. Somebody jumped off of one of the higher floors in the library, because it's a big library with multiple floors and kind of like balconies that you could actually jump off of if you wanted to, I guess. And so somebody did this, I suppose, and so now there's huge gates, not gates, but fences in front of the balconies. So it's like the library's turning into a prison. So it's this concept of freedom versus safety. And from the safety side, the people who choose to make things more quote-unquote safe, are they really thinking about safety? Well, a lot of times they're really just thinking about liability. And liability is, about maintaining power, right? If you get sued into oblivion, if you're facing multiple lawsuits because it's quote-unquote unsafe and the jurisdictional system rakes you over the coals, then it's like, well, we can't have a library at all then. So that's kind of their thinking. And so like, well, what are we going to do? Let's just put up gates or fences, and let's put scanners, and we'll hire a bunch of security. And then on the other side, you get people going into the library and they're like, this is like a prison. This sucks. And, you know, they can't say anything because, well, what are you really, whenever you talk to anybody, you would have to talk to people going up levels, like to the security guards, talk to the people behind the desk, escalate, talk to the one of the supervisors, talk to the library manager, talk to the board of directors. Okay, it's public library, talk to the city. Okay, now talk to the government. So it's like you'd have to escalate so many levels just to say, this is ridiculous. Why is there so much security? And they would tell you at each and every level, either I just work here, I'm just doing my job, you know, I don't make the decisions, or they would tell you it's for safety reasons because somebody got stabbed. And so, okay, so who wants to really go through all that escalation? People are not stupid. They know kind of like you're not going to get anywhere, so they just don't say anything. But slowly and slowly, this safety thing keeps on marching forward, and things just become more and more safe. And it's just that's one example, but there's many more. It's got to do at the universities, libraries. You cannot say something because it is going to cause somebody anxiety. It's going to be racist. It's going to be anti-Semitic. It's going to be misogynist. It's going to be sexist. It's going to be xenophobic. It's going to be transphobic. It's going to be bigoted or whatever. You cannot say anything, or it'll be conspiratorial or something. So it's like, what can you say? Where's the freedom really to say stuff? If we have so-called free speech or whatever that's written in the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and so they use safety over freedom, and it's actually getting worse. And you know, this is, I mean, I feel stupid talking about this, but this is about like the 1984 George Orwellian, Brave New World, Fahrenheit 9/11, burning books and whatever, and thought crimes and suppression of ideas. It's getting worse, and the UK is a nightmare. Canada is turning worse. I think in the UK they arrested like 3,000 people for Facebook posts. One person called someone a Muppet, and they were arrested because they quote unquote caused somebody an anxiety online. So hate speech laws, and they're just trying to pass more here in Canada. I think there was someone saying that, well, passages in the Old Testament in the Bible are hate speech towards homosexual or LGBT community, like in Leviticus. I think Leviticus 18, it says that homosexuality is an abomination, which is true. That's true. But you cannot say this kind of stuff according to these people, even if you are like they literally, well, first they wouldn't even believe that it's God saying it because they're probably atheists or something, and then they would say like, oh, it's encroaching on our safety or someone's whatever rights. So this is kind of like what happens, and how crazy things get. But the heart of it is freedom versus safety. And personally, my personal opinion is that no one is actually free. I believe that you're either a slave to God or a slave to sin. So that's what I believe.